What's up, everybody? This is JusticeSoulTuna with another voice of JST. And sorry about the acoustics. I'm in a big room right now in my university, and I just wanted to pick this time to talk about it. And yeah, due to a certain fighting game that I know and love, obviously Street Fighter Cross Tekken, I'm constantly reminded of this one game in particular that comes back to haunt me every time. And sometimes I just think, yo, like, what happened in that game, man? And in fact, that's what I'm here to talk about, because it's something that always intrigues me. It intrigued me when I played it, and it still intrigues me to this day. And I continually try to look for ideas and themes about it to, keep up the conversation. And that game is Spec Ops: The Line. But the thing about that game, and that bothers me, isn't the game itself, but how people consistently use it as a basis to fuel their COD agendas, to fuel their COD hate, to fuel their anti-modern war shooter hate, and it's really, really bad. And I think that's not what it's about. I mean, some of the reviewers, they do it justice. They truly do it justice. I think extra credits talk about Spec Ops: The Line was good, so was Zero Punctuation, and the Machinima review was good, but I thought like the guy kind of did mention that, but he talked more about the game itself than anything else. Now, the GameSpot review was highly criticized, and people were saying really stupid stuff like, oh, you gave this a 6.5, but you gave COD like a 1/3, like an 8. So of course you see the usual comments, but I've come here to kind of put this into perspective. Now, I don't believe Spec Ops: The Line was all about simply telling us that violence in games is pointless. That's not. Many people said that if that's the case, then how can we play the game, still enjoy and get achievements for it and stuff, when the game is, yes, it's telling us to do it, but obviously slapping us on the wrist for it, because it seems like there's a disconnect. And many people say that disconnect is part of the themes. I agree. However, I don't think that it's telling us that war and violence is pointless, because that actually is besides the point, ironically. What it's not telling us isn't that war and violence is pointless, but it's the reasons behind our choices. See, violence is never right. That's the honest truth. Violence, killing is never right. But it's the purpose and direction of said violence that separates the mass murderers from the people who saved their country, from the people who went to Dubai and failed to save anybody. That's where the difference is. That's the line, so to speak. See, now people say this all about like mindless killing in Call of Duty and fighting off foreigners and stuff, but have people forgotten context? Have people forgotten stories? See, all of this anti-COD hate is just fueled based upon the hate against the franchise itself, its popularity, and its fan base, and especially the multiplayer. But if you actually think about the storylines of Call of Duty, have at any point in any of those games, any of the characters said, what we're doing is right and just, and we are morally superior, and you should, agree with us? No character in Call of Duty said that. No character has said that what we're doing is the right thing to do. Each conflict, each individual is caught up in a war trying to turn the tide in favor of those who they're working for. And usually, it's always because of some wrongdoing on both sides. Now see, Call of Duty 4, if you remember correctly, and that's the one game people dick ride the most. Remember when people used to say that Call of Duty is better than every other game series? Now it's the other way around. It's every other game series is better than Call of Duty, but people still dick ride Call of Duty 4 anyway. In the game itself, wasn't the whole idea is like kind of striking back at the West because of being prostituted to it, that its people are basically being controlled and stuff like that, and then the West seeks to control, seeks to corrupt the Middle Eastern standards and stuff like that. And obviously some ill practices have been done, but obviously his goal was to start a nuclear war. But it's like, what, so we're gonna allow that? No, it's like, this person is trying to kill millions, thousands of people with nuclear war, and that's good for nobody. That's where the American soldiers and British soldiers basically stepped in. In Modern Warfare 2, I'd say Modern Warfare 2 is probably the most complex one, because it's all about how, first of all, Shepard is trying to start a pointless war with the Russians to strike back at the fact that Zakhaev was made a hero despite all the things that went down. And if you remember, Captain John Price wasn't trying to say that they were right, him and Soap were in the right and they had to defeat Shepard because he's evil. They basically said that no, history is written by the victor. If Shepard wins, he's going to start a war with the Russians based off of a conflict he started in no Russian, and end up killing millions of people on top of the millions of Americans that died because of the Russian invasion for pretty much completely psychotic reasons. And he basically said that what matters, isn't like the way we look. What matters is the fact that we kill them. They were fugitives, outlaws, and they had to basically kill a American general, all for the sake of stopping a near pointless war. I mean, America was invaded because Shepard basically made
an American soldier do create heinous acts in no Russian, all for what? For the purpose of gaining intel? No, for the purpose of basically creating a setup, almost, which worked for him because Makarov used it himself. Now, obviously, if you've heard all this, that's fair enough, because I'm just reiterating the point that, like, the COD storylines have always had this element of there's mistakes on both sides, you know, and in Modern Warfare 3, it shows how, based on, you know, the decisions of a few people, the whole world pays for it. America and its allies, you know, from, you know, New York to Paris to Hamburg, have to basically pay the price of war, all because of conflict started, you know. So it's not 100% you're killing mindlessly. No, you're fighting back against, you know, Russian ultra-nationalists, all because they believe that, you know, you've wronged them. They're killing people and you're defending yourself, as well as taking the offensive. Now, in Spec Ops: The Line, I didn't believe that the theme was all about feeling bad about killing people. Because, see, Walker started off trying to save, you know, the inhabitants. He found out from Conrad that the evacuation of Dubai was completely unsuccessful. It was a complete failure, right? So he then set out to basically like fill Conrad's shoes, basically, and figure out if he could find the man he looked up to and save him as well as save everyone else. But see, I knew, especially like around about the part where where the 33rd, the American soldiers were shooting at you, and they basically said, like, you know, what are you doing? Like, we're here to help, like, we're soldiers as well, like, so why are you shooting at us, that kind of thing. And finding, like, all of the really empty places where people used to live, I began to have this sinking feeling that we're either not going to leave here alive or something terrible is going to happen. Because you know, obviously, my intention, yes, was to save people, and yes, you find out that the intention wasn't that. I was supposed to find survivors, you know, leave the city immediately, radio in from the storm wall, but it's like, Walker, that is, basically felt a sense of, well, obligation, like, I can't just ignore this and expect this to go on, because people could die. Like, he wanted to be a hero, and yes, you say that, you know, as Conrad, the mental image, Conrad basically said that, you want to be something you're not, a hero, which is understandable. But this does not mean that modern military shooters are somehow wrong or bad and, you know, we're not allowed to play them. Because at the end of the day, games are games. Video games can transport us to different worlds. It can be a sci-fi world, you know, nearly destroyed by Reapers. It can be a fantasy world where different gods try to restore balance. Different horsemen, I should say, try to restore balance to a world gone into chaos, that kind of thing. It could be an interesting world with elf-like creatures and goblins and monsters. It could also be a military shooter world where the world is on the brink of nuclear war, and the only way to save it is to stop, you know, the corrupt people at hands of it. See, because in these games, it's like, obviously, unless there is like a direct moral system, like in Call of Duty, for example, the idea isn't to be morally right, to somehow show that the America or the West and, you know, the British are somehow superior, but rather to stop the killing of innocent lives, all for, you know, the sake of just, you know, preserving the human race, basically, not falling into nuclear winter. And that's the idea. You know, it's not that anyone's right or wrong. See, because in Spec Ops: The Line, you know, as time goes on within the game, you are killing more and more people. And it's like you're trying to discover answers. Walker is desperately trying to find something. Of course, he has dissociative disorder, which causes him to see things that, you know, don't exist, to continue on thinking he's hearing Conrad's voice when it's just him filling in the blanks, trying to believe that when he used the phosphorus gas, I think, the phosphorus substance, which killed, I'd say probably like a quarter, if not half, of the civilians they're trying to save, which is probably the turning point and the shocking part of the game. It certainly makes you think, and I certainly felt bad, because basically, even though the gameplay itself, many say that it's not that great, I did enjoy it, because once I got a hang of it, I mean, it's no Gears of War, once I got a hang of it, I certainly felt this sense of, like, urgency that I wanted to somehow figure out a way to get to the bottom of what is going on, because I knew for a fact that there's so many things wrong with what's happening in Dubai. I wanted to understand why the 33rd was constantly attacking people, why there was a martial law, why there's so many dead bodies hanging everywhere. I wanted to find out how the 33rd always knew where we were, and once you find out it's not Conrad, you find out it's the radio guy. You know, I wanted to find out if it was still possible to save people. Now, I didn't lie to myself. I didn't think to myself, what we're doing here is right. You know, I'm morally superior. I want to be a hero. I wanted to figure out to myself, like, can I find this Conrad and get some answers? I wasn't gonna like kill him and walk off into the sunset like, yeah, you know, we saved the world, go America. No, I want to discover what has happened in Dubai, and why do I feel like coming here was the biggest mistake of my life? That's the way I felt, basically. See, Spec Ops The Line basically gets you considered that not necessarily the killing is pointless or video games with violence are pointless. No, that's not really the point, because otherwise, don't even play the game then. If that was Jaeger's message, then don't even pick up the controller, because really, you will be killing people to get to that end of the story. That's why some people say that like that kind of point was forced. It's like saying that, I mean, even kind of Yahtzee touched upon. It's like saying, okay, here's some violence, enjoy some violence. Oh, don't enjoy that violence, you're a bad person. You know, it's kind of awkward in a sense. I mean, the multiplayer is a completely different aspect, but in terms of the storyline, I mean, the actual violence itself was enjoyable. The actual shooting was actually decent. Getting some of the headshots are satisfying. Some of the weapons are really intense. But what I felt was like this hellish feeling that I was fighting for answers with increasing enemies, with like increasing odds stacked against me, increasing difficulty as well, and like this constant tense feeling that, damn it, I just came here to save people, now all these people are dying at my hands. You know, we've killed civilians. I can't find this Conrad guy. I can't find some answers. So when basically, you know, both Luco and the other guy, the black guy, had ended up dying, I mean, I just thought like, you know, we're broken. Like our team is, you know, my team is dead. We're broken. We thought we came to accomplish something simple, but obviously that's not the case. See, I mean, yes, the game can be held as a commentary on violence in video games and violence in modern military shooters, but it's more a look at like the hells and eventual psychological distress that a American soldier, just soldiers in general, have to do, like sometimes making like completely heinous decisions. See, even in Call of Duty, and this is one thing I've always said, in Call of Duty, people, like all the choices you've made haven't always been, well not choices, all the things you've done haven't always been 100% right, or, you know, whatever. People say that COD glorifies violence, but not really. It's like, the violence is an aspect of excitement, like just like in an action movie, but it's not saying that it's right or fine. I mean, some of the kills in Call of Duty have been gruesome. These people could have been anything. I mean, really, if you feel nothing for what you're doing in the game, that's nobody's fault. That's you know, you can't say this game didn't make me feel emotionally bad, therefore this game is emotionless. No, it's like you're the one who's emotionless. Sometimes some of the kills you give two people in Call of Duty, some of them are pretty gruesome. Like in Modern Warfare 2, when you're hanging down above one of those soldiers, the black Spec Ops soldiers, and you ended up stabbing one of them in the throat, like that just looked pretty gruesome. I mean, you could say all this stuff like, oh, he had a wife and kids or whatever, but all of these people are people. But one thing I've never been disillusioned about in Call of Duty is killing is wrong, yes, but killing with a purpose to stop the killing of most. Yes, I know it's a dilemma, but the point is that these are action games with a direction. See, now the line, once again, the line isn't that violence in video games is 100% wrong and you should feel bad for playing military shooters, but rather that the consideration of the reasons behind what's happening as a result of this violence and who's getting killed and why, that's the problem. See, Walker was initially a man with good intentions, but a man who basically was driven but also compelled to do heinous acts, all because he believed that there would be a good end result, and there in fact wasn't. And by the end of the game, after being, you know, like basically tried and tested physically from playing this game, which mind you was incredibly difficult towards the end, and I felt a crazy feeling of dread and basically just being tired of how, you know, grueling the last couple of minutes were. I certainly understood that at the end, when I gave my guns to the American soldiers and got on, like, I fucked up, I've done something horrible, and though I may not die or pay for my crimes, I'll live with this for the rest of my life. So basically, in Call of Duty, one thing I've understood is that it's not so much that when you win, when you succeed, that you're somehow morally superior or that you're morally right. But rather, you've done what had to be done, good or bad, to basically bring down a Russian nationalist bent on destroying the world with nuclear war, bring down a gun for hire, you know, bent on, you know, getting money and profiting off people suffering, or to even bring down a vengeful Hispanic warlord who lost his sister in a fire. Lost his sister in an explosion, and she was damaged from the fire, basically. It's not about being morally right, it's about accomplishing a goal. So, I mean, that's just what I think. This is JusticeSoulTuna with voice of JST. So, yeah, talk to everyone later.